looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that? Arr!
Hello everyone, it's Timmy2009, and I'm back with another video. And welcome to episode 2 of Bluebird Thomas RE-printed. This is a series where I take a look at all my new rebranded Bluebird Thomas trains that I've upgraded since 2022. And with this new rebrand comes a lot of new characters and a lot of new changes to the Bluebird collection. So for this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Steam Team. Now, I've always wanted to talk about the Steam Team ever since I started this series. You all know the Steam Team, the 8 iconic characters of Thomas' Friends. Now, I know some of you are probably going to be saying, well, what about the other characters like Duck, Donald, Douglas, Oliver, etc.? Well, yes, they're all iconic as well. Hit Entertainment just wanted to have, a most marketable, recognizable cast, so that's probably why they created the Steam Team. I mean, I think that's right. I don't know. I'm not sure, why Hit Entertainment made the Steam Team to begin with. I'm sure someone would probably tell me, but these 8 are the symbol of the show from Season 8 onwards, for better or for worse. But little did we know that things could only go downhill from here. And this is where the tragedy begins. And what might you be talking about, you might ask? Sorry if I got tongue twisted for a second. But you all know Thomas and Friends, the classic model series where the trains' mouths don't move, but their eyes move. And they use actual real trains that they scratch built themselves that function like toy trains. Those were the good old days, back from 1984 to 2007. Now, in 2008, they tried to experiment with CGI faces on model trains, which had some pretty horrifying results, if I'm being honest. I don't think anyone was a fan of the faces and the writing in that era, in that season. But this is where things all went wrong. And here we go. Enter the CGI series, written by Sharon Miller and animated by none other than Nitrogen Studios. So, originally Hero of the Rails was actually supposed to be a model series type of movie, which I thought would be pretty nice, but that's something I didn't know until now. But unfortunately, they made it a full CGI movie. And while it did look promising, things could only get worse in terms of writing and directing. So here we have the Nitrogen Studios era. Now, what I will say is that I'm actually a big fan of the Andrew Brenner era because it brought back the good classic writing. And for those of you who don't know what the Andrew Brenner series is, it's basically a mix between the classic series and the new series, where the writing is good and the characters are back to normal, but there are some characters who still have been flanderized and haven't really learned anything since the Hit era. Now, what I will be talking about here is, well, I'm not a fan of the CGI series and talking about these characters. Now, here's how this is going to work. Move the CGI characters aside. Now, here's the reason why I don't like the Sharon Miller era. The 3 strikes formula and the character flanderization, if that wasn't obvious. They've really ran out of ideas ever since the Hit era, and the 3 strikes formula became the norm. But anyways, let's talk about how this is going to go. So, I'm going to be talking about every single character from the Steam Team, going in order from my least favorite to favorite in terms of character personality. I'm going to talk about the characters who have from most flanderized to least flanderized. And note that this is just my opinion. You are allowed to disagree with me if you want, and you're allowed to agree with me if you want. Opinions are opinions, so just... Now, if you have a certain different opinion, I can respect it. Because, like, yeah. So anyways, join me as I talk about the Steam team and how the CGI series destroyed most of them. So, without further ado, let's ride the rails and get on track. Alright, so, move the original Steam team out of the way and put the CGI team eye to eye with each other. The war has just begun. Not literally, but you know what I mean. So, now, let's start off with my least favorite of the entire CGI series. Now, this one that probably, like, most people are probably going to disagree with me on, but I'm sure there's some who might probably think the same. I don't know. We'll just see how this goes. So, my least favorite engine in the CGI series in terms of the Steam team would probably be Henry. Now, this really is no, like, I feel like this is kind of sad for me because I really love Henry. Henry, as you know, is one of my favorite characters in the show. And Henry's like a fan favorite among fans. And you probably know that Henry was replaced with a female in Big World Big Adventures, but that's not the subject. Like, I'm fully aware of that. I just don't count that. I'm just gonna, like, talk about the Andrew Brenner era, because, let's be honest, I hate Big World Big Adventures, if that wasn't clear enough. And I'm sure a lot of other people hate Big World Big Adventures as well. Even the Unlucky Tug. But, anyways, back to Henry. So, let's start off with Henry the Green Engine. So, Henry, as you probably know, is the big, strong green engine on Sodor. He has quite the history among the Thomas and Friends series, where he got shut up in a tunnel all because he wouldn't come out because of the rain. He had a big crash in the Flying Kipper, which we all know is pretty iconic. And he got a new shape and a larger firebox so that he doesn't need special coal. Well, until the episode What's the Matter with Henry came out, and that one scene in Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Yeah, what I will say is that season 6 and 7, like, I will say that they're not perfect, because they do, like, mess with a little bit of the continuity, and there are a few continuity errors in there, but I still love them. If you hear a noise in the background, please ignore it. So, anyways, I do love Henry's design here. Like, he's based off the LMS Black 5s, except his tender is a little based off of the Fowler tenders. Yeah. And I gotta say, like, Henry has a pretty great face, and I love his wheel configuration, especially the piston rods. Now, these are based off of Tiny Tank engines, so please give credit to Thomas Adventures for the designs. But yeah. Anyways, now what happened to Henry in the CGI series? Well, Henry started off as a grumpy, arrogant character in the model series from season 1, but then he later learns to be more humble and kind to everyone, and I don't think Henry was that afraid of anything. Yes, he was afraid of a few drops of rain, but he wasn't a childish coward back then. Now, the same cannot be said for CGI Henry over here. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, like, in the Hit era, they made Henry into a wimp. And that carried on over in the Nitrogen era. And I think Henry only got worse because he still acts like a coward in the Andrew Brenner era. Now, there is one episode that I actually think handled Henry's character pretty well, and that is Henry Gets the Express. I think that's the only time that Henry never acted like a coward. I think the biggest example of Henry being this childish would be Henry Spots Trouble, where Henry, like, freaks out over because he thinks that trains can get chicken pox, when we know that's all not true. And there's another episode where Henry, like, has leaves on his eyes and he's, like, screaming. Well, I will say, like, okay, but if you want to know, like, what my favorite episode revolving Henry and the Andrew Brenner is, I'm going to say Henry in the Dark, mainly just because I love the fact that Henry glows in the dark, and people just think he's a ghost, which is kind of funny. But yeah. And I think another thing that people will complain about is Carrie Shale's performance as Henry. Yes, Carrie Shale, the same guy who voices Larry from The Amazing World of Gumball, which I found interesting. And I'm sure he also voices a few other characters in Thomas and Friends, but I think people might complain that Carrie Shale doesn't fit Henry. Now, I can't exactly remember, no, wait. I think Keith Wickham voices Henry in the UK dub, and while I do like his performance, now this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but I actually like Carrie Shale's voice. Like, Carrie Shale is a pretty nice actor, especially when he voices Larry from Gumball. And I think over time, I usually got used to, like, the new voices for some of these other characters that Carrie Shale does voice, but he still kept voicing Henry in the ARC era from season 19 onwards. But yeah, this is probably why Henry is my least favorite, because he still acts like a coward to this day. Now, if you actually do like CGI Henry, I respect your opinion. Although, if you do agree that, please comment down below what you think of CGI Henry. Personally, he has to be my least favorite. That's just how it is. But I'm fine if you like him. I still prefer, like, how Henry was handled in season 1 through 7. Yes, there are some aspects I like about CGI Henry, but overall, he just isn't up there with all the other CGI engines in the Steam team. Okay, I've rambled long enough about Henry. Alright, I should compare their faces side by side. It's pretty obvious, I love the model series faces more. I feel like my issue with the CGI faces is that they're too simplified, and they lack all that detail that the model series engines had. Alright. At number 7, and this should be an interesting but kind of like a little bit of a coincidence, we have Toby the Tram Engine. Now, I think Toby has suffered the same problems that Henry has, so I'm probably not going to talk too much about Toby. But anyways, now Toby has a pretty interesting character, so he's another one of those old engines. Maybe or maybe not as old as Edward, but still. He has a coach called Henrietta. His line used to... Oh yeah, when Sir Tom Hat met him on holiday, he met Toby the Tram Engine, whose line was closing down, but then Sir Tom Hat offered him to, work on his railway after Thomas got into a little bit of trouble with the policeman. And Toby just rang his bell and scared him off, and then him and Thomas became good friends. And I think there are a lot of other iconic moments, like Toby in the Flood, for example. But yeah, Toby is another one of those old, wise characters who, he's basically, a mentor figure for, Thomas and, Percy. I think these three have become good friends. Now, I think in the original classic series, Percy and Toby were the actual best friends in the seasons 1 through 7. However, in the hit era, they decided to make Thomas and Percy best friends. So anyways, yes, just like Henry, Toby also acts like a coward. But I think there are, a lot of other good moments with him. But yeah. And honestly, I wasn't a fan of Michael Brandon's voice for Toby. Now, I think William Hope actually does a pretty good job. Although, I will admit, I don't really mind Rob Rackstraw's Toby voice that much. I think he does a pretty nice job, considering that Rob Rackstraw is a pretty good actor. For the most part. I don't really hate the Bob the Builder UK dub, but I actually prefer the US dub more. So, I think what people will say is that Signals Crossed is probably the worst Toby-centric episode, because Toby still acts like a coward and is afraid of signals. But anyways. Yeah, like I said, I don't really know what else to say about Toby that hasn't been said. Like, I really love Toby. He's one of my favorite characters, but I feel like the CGI series just didn't do him justice. Like, these two literally have the same character flanderization. Can you please tell me the difference? Like, I don't really know what's, like, different about them. Like, they both have different character traits in the classic series, but they both got the same flanderization.